Employment Relations, Assessment 2, Group Presentation.
The stakeholder that we have been allocated is a large multinational firm domiciled overseas with 1,500 staff in 3 locations throughout New Zealand. For the purpose of this presentation, we have chosen to base our analysis on the following assumptions. There is a current boom in the demand for the construction firms in New Zealand due to the Christchurch earthquake, safety-proofing Wellington City from earthquake-threatened buildings, and the Auckland housing shortage. This firm is operating in the construction industry in Christchurch, Wellington, and Auckland. XYZ Construction is a subsidiary of XYZ Group, internationally based. XYZ Group have entered the New Zealand market as they view the current strain on the construction industry as a profitable opportunity that can create a high return. Thus, XYZ Construction's purpose is to maximise profits, providing the greatest return on investment for the parent company, XYZ Group. XYZ Construction is a New Zealand-based entity and needs to abide by all of the New Zealand laws, regulations and legislation. There are various laws, regulations and legislation that XYZ Construction will need to abide by. Within these, there are several clauses/situations that currently do not work in favour for meeting XYZ Construction's main aim, to maximise the return on investment for the parent company XYZ Group. These clauses and situations will be outlined.
The Employment Relations Act was introduced in 2000. Over the last 15 years, the Employment Relations Act has undergone many amendments. The purpose of the Employment Relations Act 2000 is to construct productive employment relationships through the promotion of good faith in all aspects of the employment environment and the employment relationship. This creates mutual obligations of trust and confidence, but is also a legislative requirement for good faith of behaviour within the workplace. The sections of the Employment Relations Act 2000 that relate to XYZ Construction are strikes, meal breaks, minimum wage, and the employer and the employee's negotiating power for employment agreements. Legislation currently allows employees with advance notice to stop their roles and duties within the workplace to have a point heard. Workers who still have the right to return to their job after the strike, according to Butterworth's Legislation Series 2012. Desired new legislation at governmental level would remove the obligation for employers to continue the employment of striking employees and allow for their positions to be filled during the strike working within the means of good faith for the intentions of the business. At a firm level, XYZ Construction would be able to fill vacancies that create cost operations and allow dismissal of employees who are deemed antagonists to operations. Legislation currently allows employees to have adequate paid and unpaid breaks to recover and refresh during working hours, initially scheduled through negotiation. Desired new legislation at governmental level would allow employers to decide the frequency and distribution of paid and unpaid breaks within the means of good faith of the intentions of the business. At a firm level, XYZ Construction will be able to effectively manage breaks to employees' needs based on productivity.
The third requirement under the Employment Relations Act 2000 that affects XYZ Construction is minimum wage. Legislation currently creates floor minimums for employees' wages within 3 different scenarios: training minimum wage, the starting out wage, and the adult minimum wage. Desired new legislation at a governmental level would remove any minimum wage entitlements to employees. At a firm level, XYZ Construction will be able to effectively manage the wage cost and schedule of tasks to employees' skill level. The fourth requirement under the Employment Relations Act 2000 that affects XYZ Construction is negotiating employment agreements. Legislation currently enforces employers to act in good faith and offer candidates the original offer of employment if negotiations by the employee are not accepted. This allows employees the opportunity to request more while being able to hold the original offer. Desired new legislation at a governmental level would remove the requirement for the employer to oblige by offer made pre-negotiation. At a firm level, XYZ Construction, while hiring, will be able to enjoy security that candidates will have more reason to accept the original offer without negotiating. This results in agreements that work to maximize value to the firm. The fifth requirement under the Employment Relations Act 2000 that affects XYZ Construction is flexible work hours. Legislation currently requires that both parties agree before flexible work arrangements can take place. Desired new legislation at a governmental level would allow for firms to enforce flexible working arrangements on both new and current employees working within the means of good faith for the intentions of the business. At a firm level, XYZ Construction will be able to create cost efficiencies by requesting employees to be flexible with hours when external forces create a change in demand for labour, an operation directly affecting the employee's workflow.
The requirement under the Holidays Act 2003 that affects XYZ Construction is obligated leave. Legislation currently allows for two categories of leave. Leave that is directly influenced by the employee, annual leave, statutory holidays, and leave that is external and not determined by the employee, sick leave, bereavement leave. Desired new legislation at a governmental level would be to remove entitlements to leave within the means of good faith for the intentions of the business. At a firm level, XYZ Construction will be able to allocate leave prioritizing business forecasts over employees' needs without further discussion, where significant costs will occur. The requirement under the Accident Compensation Act 2001 that affects XYZ Construction is the obligation to return the claimant into the same employment in which they were in before the injury. Desired new legislation at a governmental level would be to remove the requirement for the employer to reinstate the claimant after a prolonged period of absence. At a firm level, XYZ Construction will be permanently replacing claimants, thus filling gaps in the workplace, improving work stability. The requirement under the Health and Safety Employment Act 1992 that affects XYZ Construction is work hazards. Legislation currently requires the employer to identify and mitigate any workplace-related risks and hazards that may affect their workplace. The desired new legislation would share the obligation to identify and mitigate of workplace hazards between the employer and the employee. At a firm level, this allows XYZ Construction to reduce the frequency of work-related accidents and create a safer workplace whilst reducing compliance costs.
Due to the New Zealand market being relatively small for highly skilled workers in the construction industry, XYZ Construction may need to recruit internationally to fill the highly skilled positions within the organisation. There are several visas for internationals that wish to work within New Zealand. However, the common avenue used is the accredited employer, Talent to Work Residence Visa. After working for an accredited employer for 2 years, the employee can apply for New Zealand residence. As recognised by Bedford 2006, the Talent to Work Residence Visa was first introduced into New Zealand in 2002. According to the Office of the Auditor General 2013, this avenue comes under the skilled business stream and is the most popular avenue in this category. The aim of the policy is to create greater flexibility to New Zealand accredited employers, allowing them to seek skilled labour offshore directly when it has been established that no suitable New Zealanders are available to take up the jobs they have vacant. Bedford 2006. The requirements to become an accredited employer are 1. Recruit employees below 55 years of age at a minimum of $55,000 per year, providing a minimum of 30 hours per week. 2. Be in a stable financial position and have a track record of financial performance. 3. Demonstrate high-quality human resource practices and programs. 4. Demonstrate a dedication to employing New Zealand residents. 5. A history of compliance with Immigration New Zealand. An accredited employer status is valid for a 12-month period, after which time the status can be renewed. An evaluation by Merewood 2006 found that the Talent to Work residence visa is a much more streamlined process to receive residence than any other avenue available. This creates a demand for skilled employees wishing to gain residence into New Zealand. The Talent Work to Residence visa gained through an accredited employer is more prevalent in organisations with a large workforce. Merewood 2006 found that 47% of accredited employers employed 100 or more people. Skilled migrants who are looking to apply under the Talent to Work residence visa would look in favour of large organisations such as XYZ Construction. This is shown by 94% of the work permit holders under this visa working in a large organisation, Merewood 2006. The requirement affecting XYZ Construction is there is no obligation to remain with the employer. Legislation currently holds no obligation for employees who gain a Talent to Work residence visa to stay employed with their original accredited employer. Employees can change between accredited employers and still receive residence after 2 years. This has created headhunting, resulting in a large portion of permit holders to have wages exceeding $55,000, with 43% of applicants leaving their initial accredited employer before the first 2 years, Merewood 2006. Desired new legislation at a governmental level would create a requirement for the employee to remain employed with the initial accredited employer for the duration of the 2 years before residence can be applied for. Further, implementing a binding requirement for the employee to remain employed with the employer for a further 18 months after the residence is approved, unless granted dismissal by the employer. At a firm level, XYZ Construction will be able to receive a sufficient return from their investment from recruiting overseas without having to worry about skilled employees being poached or leaving the organisation once they arrive to New Zealand, and use the visa as a quick way to residence with no intention of contributing to the firm's success.
To summarise, XYZ Construction has entered the New Zealand industry to maximise their return to XYZ Group. Although many of these legislation changes are polarised to what's currently stated, this would assist our stakeholder, a large multinational firm with a strong influence from the parent company overseas, to meet their goals outlined. The desired legislations we have discussed in this presentation will allow XYZ Construction to effectively utilise legislation relating to employment relations to produce a greater return on investment to XYZ Group. Throughout this presentation, we have used the following references: